Rollercoaster Tycoon lets you build parks in deserts, forests, and rolling green hills. Perfectly normal environments for your next park. But sometimes the game goes further. Hidden among these scenarios are futuristic cities, dinosaur-infested parks, and even alien planets. And today we're taking our RCT recreations beyond Earth, rebuilding an alien coaster on a completely different world, and seeing if it truly can translate to Planet Coaster 2. Hello everyone, welcome back to TH Designs. Today we are back with the Rollercoaster Tycoon translation series into Planet Coaster 2. Before we actually jump into the video, as you may be able to tell by the sound of my voice, I am sick. So I'm not having the best time right now, so forgive me if this video may end up being a bit shorter than usual. Regardless, I do have a very fun coaster for us today. Many of our videos in the past have taken place either in deserts, especially the last two, or really nice green pastures or anything like that. Pretty normal earthly conditions. So it got me thinking, we have access to Rollercoaster Tycoon 1, 2, and 3, and some of the best things about those games is that some of those scenarios are prehistoric, out of this world, and everything in between. So in today's video, we are going to do something a bit different. And with all those things said, let's jump into OpenRCT and let's actually take a look at the scenario that we're going to be taking a stab at today. So here we are in OpenRCT 2. If we jump over to these scenarios, and of course we have all of these scenario packs on the left. If we hang out in Corkscrew Follies, which we actually did Funtopia, I think 3 episodes ago, and today's video is also in this pack. And that scenario is Future World. This futuristic park has plenty of space for new rides on its alien landscape. So, you understand why I picked this based off what I said. I mean, this is literally, it looks like to be on Mars. And I thought, why not? I thought something different. We've kind of been doing very similar type of coasters, earthly, like I said before. And today we are kind of doing something a bit different. This is a coaster that I don't think anyone's necessarily recommended, and personally I never played this scenario, so I actually don't know of this coaster. As we know from previous videos, both with the RCT scenario coasters and the pre-build coasters, I like when the track's different colors, so this is already speaking my language. As for the coaster name, the name is Thunder Twist. It doesn't really seem to have that much of a play on the surroundings, but Thunder Twist it is. It's a vertical drop coaster, which is in the game Planet Coaster, so that's not hard. It's also not the longest track in the world. You see it doing that drop now. Pretty classic for this model. And the scenery around it is not that complicated, so I think in regards to me being sick, I'm going to be a little grateful that this may not be the longest episode, but it definitely will be a fun one. I really like when the tracks are different colors. It just makes it that much more interesting and that much easier to spot. Also with the Martian landscape, that gives us a lot of room to work with and do something fun in Planet Coaster. Speaking of, we have been working on the same map for all of our recreations, but I don't think we can do that for today. And the reason being, not because we don't have enough space, but because if we go over to the paintbrush, I don't think we have a terrain color. I mean, that's not the worst. That could theoretically work, especially that mud. But I think that there's a more oranger option, which lines up much better. If we go to a different map and use, say, the tropical or the Mediterranean style instead of the deciduous and temperate that you see here. So here we are on the Mediterranean map, and you can see it lines up a little bit more with the textures of what we're seeing in Future World. Specifically this shrub texture here I think is better than that mud one that we saw in the other one. But either way, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, so let me touch all of this up and make it about that color, and let's get prepared to actually recreate this thing. Alright, there we go. We have some kind of Martian looking landscape here. Don't mind the sea of water. That's obviously not the most realistic. Maybe this place really is habitable. Either way, despite the juxtaposition to literally the rest of the map, this portion kind of looks like it has craters and mountains and stuff. Either way, I think we're set to probably jump into Rollercoaster Tycoon and start taking a stab at this. Back in game, like we said, it is a vertical drop coaster. You can actually see that all the trains are individually colored. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that exactly, but that is very neat. The station itself just lies on the ground with a brown lift hill, which is very different than the rest of the layout. I guess it's also worth noting that there's like these weird like extraterrestrial buildings, I guess. I don't really know what these are. With a suspended monorail going around the entire park. I don't know if we're going to be able to recreate that exactly. And there's also like these like checkerboard path things. I don't really know exactly what they're going for here, but sure, it looks extraterrestrial, I guess. Either way, let's turn on the height markers on the ride tracks. We are starting on the ground. There's not that many craters or anything going on immediately around the coaster. Really the only thing being this drop underground. So we're just going to build the station, do a 90-degree turn to the right, and then go up about 70 feet, which will probably translate to about 90 feet or so in game, maybe 100. And then a turn to the left, and then we're ready to do that dive drop. So like I was saying before, this model is in game. I just have to find it quick. It is the B&M dive coaster. It's extremely wide, much wider than the one that you see in game. Here it is. This is based off of like the one you would see on like Griffin or Shikra, rather than like the typical dive coaster, like say Oblivion or Baron 1898. So that's gonna be a little inconsistent, but generally speaking, it's going to be pretty good. We'll be all right. I'm going to put the station about here. The station in game is significantly longer than what we're using in Planet Coaster, which is pretty typical for Roller Coaster Tycoon. So we're just going to make that extremely long. And then I'm going to make the lift and pretty much up to the dive drop here, and we'll be set to take on the rest of the layout. The goal of this really is to make sure that the G-forces aren't insane like they were last time for the Extreme Heights coaster, Flaming Fury. Alright, there's the lift and the little dive drop done there. Don't mind the bright red coloring, just for me to be able to see the track a little bit easier. If we take a look at the actual height, it says 137 there, but that's because the actual station itself is 31 feet. So sea level is pretty low. I mean, you can see the ocean over there is significantly lower than where we're at now. But more or less, this is a little bit over 100 feet, which if we take into that 33% rule that we've been using, that's not too far off. As for the game, we are dropping now to minus 25 feet, as you see down there. If we turn on the underground view, you can see we're doing an immediate left bank turn, which is going to pull a lot of G-forces, so we're going to have to be very careful there. This moment here looks like it's pretty extreme with the G-forces, so I may have to actually like slope this entire maneuver here rather than going up and then sharp bank. We can kind of make it one gesture. And then we're banking right into two vertical loops, which vertical loops right next to each other. It's probably going to be a little bit difficult to make look nice and symmetrical, but we'll do our best. But yeah, I think, like I said, this coaster is not very long, so we could probably do this in two gestures and spend most of our time probably actually making the entire park look nice, or at least the area around it. I'm going to build pretty much right after these vertical loops. I feel like that makes sense. Again, like I said, I'm going to try and prioritize G-forces on this one because Flaming Fury was like astronaut training compared to most of our coasters, and I don't want this one to be the same. I guess actually with that said, I didn't really test the G-forces or see the stats or anything, so let me let it run its course and then we'll take a look at the stats. Alright, there we go. So 7.32 excitement rating is pretty high. An intensity of 6.79, also pretty good. Nausea, pretty typical. G-forces, not even breaking 4, so we have to be very careful here. I do have concerns, and have had in the past few videos, that this number isn't exactly right, especially when translated to Planet Coaster and a 3D engine. But either way, let's try and stay under 4.5 at the very most. So like I said, I'm going to build to those vertical loops, which will probably be about here, and then we'll attack the layout after that. This layout probably isn't going to be very long. We're probably going to be spending most of our time on the little bits of scenery around it. Again, like I said at the beginning, this video may not be very long. Alright, so there's the loops and the big turnaround done. Big turnaround, no problem at all. Even this drop, I think the G-forces are pretty good. As you can see, we kind of translated that transition into more of like a bank curve rather than like up and then snapping everyone's necks to the right. As for the vertical loops, not a huge fan of how these look, but I originally had them profiled correctly and it wasn't even close. This thing's already at 0.3 friction multiplier and it barely makes these loops. And these loops are 60 feet in height when you take into consideration that the station is already 30 feet above sea level. This drop is about 70-80 feet, which is proportional to what you see in game. This isn't like a situation with like Liberty Loop that we had where the loop was taller than the lift. This physically struggles because of that halted drop, but it does make it, as you see right there, pretty slowly, but it does make it. Yes, so it technically makes it with a lot of help, but Yeah, not the most convincing start in the world. It looks like the logo of the Smiler at Alton Towers. That's what these loops look like. They don't look like typical vertical loops. Either way, I guess that's done. We are on Mars. Maybe there's extraterrestrial physics that we don't know. I don't know. As for in-game, we are currently about here, just before this turnaround, through this building thing. Pretty easy. Everything, we don't go up, I don't think, anymore. I think we're actually at the highest point. We just do we do this big, like, 180-degree turn with some different S-bends, ultimately leading to this big helix into one final S-bend into the brake run. So I'm going to do all of that in one pass. I mean, that's a really simple layout. It kind of follows most of the layouts that you see in older dive coasters. You see kind of the speed that coaster is taking the vertical loop. It's faster than what it is in Planet Coaster, but either way, it is interesting that this kind of rendition of the dive coaster is not too far off. I mean, the vertical loops are a little strange, but in terms of the length of the coaster, this is pretty typical to what a dive coaster would be like. Either way, I'm going to build all that track, and that'll be it. That'll be it for the layout, and then we can actually talk about how to make this look like Mars and make it look like Future World. Alright, there's the layout done. Super simple, really. I mean, we kind of already knew that. For the rest of the layout, I kind of added my own custom ups and downs to kind of keep it a little bit more interesting. This clearance here is only like 10 feet in Rollercoaster Tycoon. We know that doesn't really translate very well to Planet Coaster, so it's raised up a little bit higher than that. I also raised the lift hill by 10 feet because I just couldn't bear how slow the second half of the layout is. So what you're seeing now is a little bit better, so it's fine. It's gonna need some TLC from its surroundings, in my opinion, but the layout is done. It is the layout. So now for the fun part, I guess, depends on how you approach these videos, I suppose, the theming around it. I think first thing that we should do is probably change the color of the tracks as well as do all the supports, which that's super easy. We have this very Bumblebee kind of theming going with a brown lift hill that you see there, and then one sliver of brown track just before the station. Yeah, and then we have these little Martian buildings, some red pathing. The suspended coaster, maybe we'll do. There is no suspended coaster in Planet Coaster, but maybe we can make something work. We'll figure it out when we get there. But anyway, I'm going to give the coaster its proper color scheme and give it all the proper supports so that it kind of looks somewhat like the ride. Alright, there's the color scheme pretty much wrapped up. Not the hardest thing to do in the world. Pretty much just every other piece of track, you just alternate it between black and yellow. We do have that brown lift hill like we talked about, as well as that little sliver before the station. Also, this underground piece of track I saw in Rollercoaster Tycoon is all brown as well. So that's all taken care of. As for the actual train car, I know there's a difference between there being an orange one and a yellow one, but we had to stick with just the red variant because unfortunately you can't change the color of each individual train in Planet Coaster for some reason. Either way, back in game, I think probably now is smart to take on this powered thing and maybe these ones as well. I'm not sure exactly what I'm gonna do, but we can take a look at this. As for wall pieces in game, I don't even know where to really start with this one. It's a weird kind of like corrugated metal. It looks almost rusted. There is something like that, I believe, in game that's corrugated. Yeah, like that. That may not be the worst, and if we change the color to that kind of dark brown, yeah, that's not too dissimilar. I don't think that that's too far off, actually. So maybe that's what we go with. Stack this up a few times. If we look in game, we also have, that's really it. There's no like posts or columns or any kind of framing. But at the top, we have these weird kind of alien lantern things with these arches at the top. Let me try and find some kind of lantern thing. If not, I may have to make my own. Looking at the different lights in game, there's some things that might be kind of resemble it, but not really. I suppose this guy isn't the worst. And then we'll have to create some kind of like framing to give it that spiral look. The color itself is actually like a gold, and then I can give it a kind of red base of some kind. Something kind of like that base that kind of looks a little bit like what you see in game. As for the spiral, I don't really know what we're gonna do there. Maybe it's not a spiral, maybe it's just like little halos. Maybe I can just use simple shapes or something. Or like a ring. Do we have rings? Yeah, something like that. And if we give it that proper coloring, yeah, that's not bad. Okay, and then we'll just pretend that some kind of alien physics is keeping that attached. Something kind of like that, I guess. That's what we'll rock with. I think that's pretty close to what we see in game. There we go, and if we fill in those gaps there, we're starting to kind of get a shape. It looks so funky. I mean, these lights are definitely a choice, but they're what they look like in game. And there we go. There we have the kind of framing of our alien building. As for the roof, it looks like it's just like a brown pathway. So that's easy, and then we'll add those archways. Not too bad as well. And there you go. That's how you create a pretty basic alien structure. And we're going to have to make 2 more. Not too bad. We made a modular piece, so I'll make those other 2 quick with that modular piece that we have. And then after that, along with the path, I have another fun idea to do for this coaster. All right, there we go. There's the buildings done. You see there are the openings for the monorail. I may decide to do that. I haven't really decided if I'm going to. I think now the most important part is to probably do the pathing, which in Rollercoaster Tycoon you can see is that bright red kind of sci-fi pathing. We also have to do these checkerboard patterns. I'm going to do all that. That's not that difficult. I may even do the suspended monorail. And then, yeah, and then I have one final really cool detail I would really like to do for this to kind of fit the alien theme. So I will be back after all that's done, and then we can actually talk about what that idea is. Alright, there's the pathing, the monorail even done, this entrance, which again we're using the same one that Lucy Van Pelt made that we used last time in Extreme Heights, just because it's the same entrance type and we have it. Added that little checkerboard thing. Pathing looks pretty good, pretty happy with that. The buildings also are pretty solid. You see the monorail is around, and the monorail I'm like pretty surprised by because layout wise it's cool. You know, it's not a suspended one, it's just like a non-inverted one. But you can't change the color of the track, which is unbelievable. Look, I'm changing the colors and it doesn't actually change the rail or the supports. And if we go into game, it's maroon and black, and we can't change those colors. So I almost want to just scrap it, to be honest. It looks sillier without it, I think, but I think it looks worse with the monorail, and it's just like a gray, which is nothing like the in-game version. Either way, one last thing before we end up just highlighting the entire build and end up doing the mini cinematic as well as the POV. I have 2 things that I want to do here. I want to encompass this whole thing in some kind of dome to make it some kind of realistic, because of course this is a real park, like the guests walk around in this and everything. So how do they breathe? Well, I think we should give it some kind of like geodesic dome. That would be really cool. How I'm going to do this, I really don't know. That'll look pretty neat. I also want to do something with a new mod that has just been, I just discovered it. It was from Rudi Rennkamel. He did a fantastic video about it. With the Sky Studio feature, we can have some fun with the sky. We can make it look like as if we were on like Mars or something. Make it pretty orange, like some kind of yellow. I'll have to mess around with it some more, find that perfect balance. What's really cool is we can mess with the atmosphere and everything. We could add some fog so you can't see anything anymore. What's also neat is you can change the size of the sun, which I know isn't, on Mars the sun isn't going to be necessarily a much different size, but how cool would it be to like do some kind of like extraterrestrial sun? Like look at that. Look at it's gone. Now it's huge. Imagine like that. Imagine the cinematics we could do on like some kind of like terrestrial planet, and as if it had like a big sun. I don't know. That's really fun. Either way, I'm going to make that geodesic dome type of thing. Don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it's going to look cool. And I'm also going to mess around with the sky, and when we come back, it'll be done. We could talk about the stats, and then we can head over to that cinematic and POV and call this a wrap. Thunder Twist has been a weird one, but it's been fun. Something different, which was ultimately my goal. I will see you then. Okay, welcome to Mars, kind of. The atmosphere in this place is insane. If you haven't seen Rudi's video on this mod, totally check it out. It's a game changer. Beyond just this extraterrestrial fun stuff, it really does offer a lot of game-changing settings for just normal gameplay of Planet Coaster. It allows us to do really cool stuff like this. I mean, just check out the atmosphere here. I mean, it feels like we left Earth and really kind of achieved the goal that we were looking for. On top of that, I'm sure the first thing you notice beyond that is the dome that we created, which I'm pretty happy with. It's not necessarily a geodesic dome that was super hard to recreate. I tried my best. I also looked at what other people have tried on the workshop, and it just proved to be pretty difficult. So I just used this sphere and added these support structures and kind of this sci-fi wall thing. I don't know. It looks fine. It looks like it achieves it. But yeah, all of a sudden, I'm actually a really big fan of this coaster. The layout, of course, is not the most interesting, but the atmosphere of this place, this dome, the kind of weird buildings that surround it. Yeah, this is a really cool build. And with all that really said, let's check the stats on this thing. It should have ran enough times to be here. And if we take a look, wow, okay, it's all green. I am not gonna lie, I had no expectations of this being a good layout, but Planet Coaster says that it's pretty good. 6.28 excitement is pretty impressive. 4.90 fear, pretty high. I wonder if there's some G-forces being pulled. 1.3 nausea, pretty fair. But like, I mean, look at this. This thing like crawls at the end. I can't believe that these stats are so high. If we take a look at the results, it's a 60-second ride, most of that being the chain lift and the drop. Max speed of 66, that's pretty good. Average speed of 35, that's where it feels kind of slow, but maybe not. A max vertical G-force of 4.89, that's pretty high. I don't know exactly where that's happening. I assume at the bottom here of this drop, but that's a pretty good like gradual drop. So it could be at the loop. I guess that would make sense as well. So that's a little high. Lateral G-forces also are very high. So the stats are kind of but they led to pretty good overall testing scores. So like, as for the question that we offer every single coaster, does it translate into Planet Coaster? It's kind of weird because the atmosphere and everything and the idea of the extraterrestrial planet looks phenomenal in Planet Coaster. That absolutely translates. Now for the speed, we had a lot of issues with these loops. These are even very modified. This is at 0.3 friction multiplier, as you see there. So the layout itself, it really struggled to translate, which I think is ultimately the most important factor to consider. And in that sense, I'm going to say no. And that's back-to-back no's, which is pretty disappointing. But it's kind of like has the same deal that Flaming Fury had, where the layout was kind of underwhelming with some of its stats and translation, but for the actual like ride experience and the scenery, especially for this one, pretty killer. Pretty big fan of it. It gave us a really nice excuse to build a really cool dome, use some of the new mods that have been added, and the overall atmosphere of this game. This was an extremely fun episode. I'm really curious what kind of cinematics I can put together with this atmosphere. The POV, I actually have not seen the entire POV. I imagine it's probably going to be mostly interesting in the first half and pretty, lazy in the latter. But either way, you will see. With all those things said, I think that basically sums up today's video. But I think for what it was, I hope it was somewhat interesting for you as the viewer, especially because this video focused a little bit more on the scenery than usual. And yeah, I hope that was a lot of fun. So I hope you're satisfied with the result. I hope you're satisfied with the cinematic and the POV that will be showing up now. I will see you in the next video. Do take care. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.